So this happened just a few months ago, and I'm still shaken up as I write this. I'm a female, currently 25, and I just bought my first house with my fiancé in Charleston, South Carolina. The house we moved into was nothing too special. It was just a basic looking house appropriate for one or two people. One night, my fiancé got called into work as he had an important meeting with his employees to discuss something about customer satisfaction. It was storming outside, and I was feeling tired, so I decided to throw myself on my couch with my dog Crayon to try and find some good shows to watch on Netflix. After looking through an endless page of shows and movies, I eventually settled with American Horror Story, which is the best show in my opinion. Fast forward till about an hour into a few episodes, I start to fall asleep when I was awoke to Crayon barking. I have a German Shepherd. She was a good girl, but she did have a troublemaking mouth. Crayon was looking at the sliding glass door that led out into the backyard. Now, we live right next to a forest preserve, so I dismissed it as her barking at a squirrel or some other critter. However, her barking went from plain annoying to defensive. She then ran to the glass door, jumping on it while constantly scratching, basically trying to break it down while still barking her head off. I got curious and paused my show and went to go see what she was barking at. I took a few deep breaths to compose myself and flipped on the switch to the outside light, and what I saw will forever haunt me till this day. There was someone standing in a black raincoat looking at me, wearing a vendetta mask. It was well into the night, so I couldn't make out any features. Maybe 6 foot tall, an extra build. I closed the curtains and went straight to my cell phone to dial 911. I called Crayon over and hid in my room with him until the police showed up. Suddenly, I hear a loud crash from the living room, and at that point, I knew he had broken in. All the while, I was sobbing, praying to God that I don't die, when I heard sirens in the distance, and at that point, I felt like 1,000 pounds had been lifted off of me. I then hear rapid pounding at my door, along with 2 or 3 people yelling police. I gladly opened the door and tried my best to explain everything, but like in most situations similar to this, the man was long gone. He got away scot-free. The next week, my fiancé and I had to replace the sliding glass door, and we now have a camera security system installed. I still wondered what would have happened to me had Crayon not been there to alert me. This happened to me a few years ago when I was 25 years old, and this is by far one of the scariest and unexplained encounters I've ever had. It is absolutely true, and it's something that I just had to share. I live in a terrace house, which is basically multiple houses combined together, forming that of an apartment. It's not the best place to live in, but my parents wanted me to move out, and this was one of the only few locations that I could afford monthly rent. I live in Los Angeles, so it's expensive as hell, and without a lot of money, you're basically either struggling financially or living on the streets. Anyway, I had just gotten home from work after a long day's shift and needed time to myself. Being the big couch potato I was, I threw myself onto my couch and watched some Netflix with my cat until my fiancé got home. I have a peach-colored American short-haired cat named Gus, and he's actually my emotional support animal to help me cope with my anxiety. So I'm sitting there, watching Orange is the New Black with my cat, when he suddenly starts meowing repeatedly. Even though it's something all cats tend to do, I found the behavior very strange, as my cat never meows unless he wants food. But seeing as he was already fed not too long ago, it didn't make any sense. All of a sudden, his meowing turned into high-pitched hissing while arching his back. The hair on his back also began to stick up. At this point, I didn't know how he had gotten so scared, and that's when I realized that he was looking at the bathroom door in the hallway. My heart sank into the pit of my stomach as I realized something must have startled him. The door to the bathroom was shut, but I quietly tiptoed over to the door and put my ear to it. And that's when I heard it. A loud bang hit the door, and I grabbed Gus and took him outside of my apartment down to the lobby. At first, I figured that my boyfriend was messing with me in the worst way possible, but he had claimed that he was still at work when I called him. With no other option, I call police and they have 2 cars over within 5 minutes. 2 of the officers questioned me while the other 2 went to go check in my apartment. When they got back, they had some very odd news to share with me. They had gone up to my room and searched my entire apartment, but didn't find anyone. This was technically impossible, as I had locked the front door when I heard the noise, so whoever was there couldn't have left. I don't know if it was an intruder or something paranormal, but I knew that my mind wasn't playing tricks on me as my cat had gotten startled. One thing I do know is that I wasn't alone in my apartment building that evening. So, I live with my boyfriend in a small 1-storied house in the suburbs just outside of Bristol, England. Now, my boyfriend is the manager at our local pet supermarket, so he'd oftentimes have to work late night shifts during the night. Because of his crazy work hours, I was forced to stay home and occupy myself by watching movies on the TV. One night, it was raining heavy and my boyfriend was at work as usual, and I was at home watching a few episodes of The Walking Dead on Netflix. While watching my show, I unexpectedly heard a knock at the door. At first, I thought it was our delivery guy that brings us our groceries every week, so I get my ID and start heading toward the door while putting on my mask. This was during the current pandemic, and my boyfriend and I don't like to go shopping in fear of catching the virus, so we have someone bring it to us. I opened the door, ready to hand out my ID, but was shocked to see some random guy just standing there in the rain. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt, black pants, and he had messy hair, almost homeless. Suddenly, he started abruptly making loud, high-pitched noises. His mouth hung open, revealing several missing teeth, and I saw craze in his red eyes. It startled me at first, but trying to be polite, I asked him if he needed help. But as expected, he gave no response. This guy was clearly on some strong shit. At this point, my adrenaline was rushing like crazy, but I didn't want to be rude and close the door on him. After several attempts of me asking if he needed help, he slowly turned around and walked back away, disappearing into the night, still pouring like crazy. I was a bit weirded out, but I didn't feel threatened and figured this guy was just drunk. I continued to watch my show, and eventually my boyfriend comes home and we call it a night. Fast forward to around 4 in the morning. I was sleeping in my bed when I heard my phone ring. I rubbed my eyes and saw that it was an unknown number, so I could only assume that it was bad news. As soon as I picked up the phone, I then heard the noises. The very same noises from the man earlier. I hung up the phone and blocked the number, making sure that they wouldn't call back. But I have no idea as to how he managed to get my number. That question still haunts me till this day. I still live in that house today, and nothing strange or abnormal has ever happened since. For some context, I'm a 19-year-old female, and I just moved out of state and had just started my first semester in college. I didn't live on campus as it basically costed a fortune, so I had to live with my parents until I could afford to move out. One day over the weekend, my parents had left the house for a 3-day vacation, so I had the house to myself. Being only 19 and easily getting bored, there weren't too many things that I could occupy myself with. So I call up my friend who lives just around the corner from me and invite her over to watch some Netflix as we had recently got it. She agreed and came over to my house, and we both sat on the couch and watched a movie. About an hour into the movie we were watching, my friend grabs the remote and pauses the movie, saying, "Liz, do you hear that?" It was very faint, but I could just make out a sort of slight metal banging coming from my backyard. I live by a wooded area, so there are a bunch of unwanted critters that look around my backyard. However, the noise sounded as if it were in a pattern. It's the same bang and scraping noise repeated over and over again, and I felt sick to my stomach. Being a very paranoid person who watches too many horror movies, I grabbed my brother's baseball bat from his room while I opened the back door. It was practically pitch black outside, so I couldn't see as to what was making the noise. At first, I thought that it could have been a rat or even a squirrel. But when I turned on the outside light, all of my thoughts as to what it could be quickly vanished. The outside light revealed a man hitting my AC condenser with one of my dad's gardening tools. He was super thin, maybe about 5'8", and he looked like he hadn't seen anyone in years. I lost it and ran back inside, telling my friend that we had to leave through the front, and that's exactly what we did. We ran out of that house so fast and got into my car while my friend was on the phone with the police. All the while, I had been crying my eyes out until we stopped at a nearby gas station so I could calm down. As far as I know, whoever was in my yard that night was gone. The police searched the area, but there was no sign of the person that matched my description. Later, the police told me some very disturbing news. They said that as they were looking around my house, they saw that the door to my garage was wide open and broken down.